whatever. Yes. Yeah. Sorry.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I would add to that it's no different with the Conservative Party, that there is 1000% a use of Black people to weaponize a concerted effort to literally, quote unquote, make America great again. The concept of make America great again did not start with Donald Trump. It started with Ronald Reagan, and it happened right after the Civil Rights Movement. There was a very strong, visceral response by white people after the Civil Rights Movement, after the Voting Rights Act of 1965, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, the Fair Housing Act of 1969, the Economic Opportunity Act of 1965. These were all efforts that were put in place on a federal level to say, okay, fine, here in the damn, we gonna give you a little bit of something to get your weight up. After that, there was a active effort made by conservatives
and remain in the area. The destruction of the spirit of the people of southern Louisiana and Mississippi may end up being the most tragic loss of all.
George Bush doesn't care about Black people.
Some white folks in Texas, where I grew up, say, but I didn't have any slaves.
Yes. You also didn't fight in the American Revolution either, but you celebrate that. And that's how heritage works, in its best way. I wasn't at, the March on Washington, but when I look at it, I feel a certain way. I feel very proud. I feel very attached. When I, do my research on the Civil War and I, read about, the colored troops fighting in certain places and doing certain things, I feel a certain thing. Now, I wasn't there. I didn't have that fight. But I feel a certain thing, and that's how heritage works. But heritage is not just, what you're proud of. We recognize the past when it flatters us. Nobody on the 4th of July, has a cookout, and, if I showed up at that cookout and said, why are you celebrating? That was the past. You didn't fight in the American Revolution. People would look at me like I was crazy. I was just reading a story today about how the Washington Monument, reopened, and there were all sorts of celebrations down there. We don't say, well, that's the past, let the Washington Monument crumble. We are, at this very moment, still paying pensions to families of people from World War I. We don't say, well, that was the past, let them go. We recognize the state outlives individuals, that it outlives generations. It's only when we get to, really, really difficult questions, that we decide, that the past is the past. Now, I as an individual would like to get my paycheck every week for the work that I've done in the past. And it would be very nice if I didn't get the bills that I've accumulated in the past. I would like that world too, but that's not how the world works, And in America, we're deluding ourselves. We are trying not to open our bills. We only want to open our paychecks that come from the past. But the bill is accumulating and it's all around us.
Actually recently did some math, some number crunching, which is really why I've been kind of putting off doing this video, because I hate math, and I never actually sat down and sort of did the hard numbers before. But Aaron Rodgers, football player, was hosting Jeopardy, and this little moment on one of the episodes kind of went viral and started circulating around because there was a question that was basically on reparations. I will include a little quick clip.
In 2015, Congress authorized payments of $4.44 million to each of these people, $10,000 for each day of their captivity. Joe Beth.
Who were slaves?
No.
So it turned out the answer to that question was the Iran hostage crisis, which I will include links and information to that in the description box. But basically, that was a terrorist situation where the victims of the Iran hostage crisis were given $10,000 per day for every day that they were held hostage, which amounted to $4.4 million. They were given $10,000 for every day. Each person was given $10,000 per day for every day that they were held hostage. So any of you that followed me on Instagram probably saw this. I posted on Instagram. I said, let's do some math. I said $10,000 a day for every day of slavery. I'm going to be nice and just give a smooth 400 years. 400 years of slavery times 365 days a year is 146,000. 146,000 days. 146,000 days times 10,000 is $1,460 million per person. So the reason why I picked this number is because this is a number that's already been pre-established by the United States government as an acceptable amount for people that have been held basically hostage on American soil. So if that's the rate, if $10,000 a day is the rate, $10,000 a day, and that was real nice. I was like, I'm gonna be nice. I'm gonna be nice, and
we tend to talk about our right
to be free from racial discrimination in this country in terms that are not constitutional. We talk about it as though it's about feelings, about whether people are fair to us or not, about the hearts of people and whether people are racist in their heart, whether they have a racist bone in their body, when in fact we ought to be talking about our right to be free of discrimination, our right to full citizenship, our right to full dignity as Americans, as constitutionally grounded, as compelled by the language of our foundational document, as intended by the framers of the 14th Amendment. We don't talk about our right to be free of discrimination as a constitutional imperative. We know we should be free of discrimination. We know we're entitled to equality, but we don't ground it in that way. And so it allows the conversation to get loose and amorphous, and it allows emotion to take the place of what should be the clear certainty of our right to be full citizens.
And you've been a very requested guest.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. People are always like, you got to have Dr. Claud Anderson on. You got to have Dr. Claud Anderson on for years.
Yes.
People have been saying that.
Well, you know why? I've been paying them well to ask you that.
Is that what Powernomics is?
No, Powernomics is specifically dedicated to trying to inform black folk and trying to elevate them to a higher level of competitiveness in the society and overcome the primary legacies of slavery and centuries of Jim Crow semi-slavery in the South. We're in a very dangerous situation in this country as black folk, and this next year going to be our last chance to get out of it.
I thought you about to say it's going to be our last year period. I wouldn't doubt that either.
That's pretty close. You're in a very dangerous situation. After all my years in politics and national politics and international politics, that's why I left government, saying that somebody had to get out here and start raising Cain on behalf of black folk.
What did you do in government? What did you do in government?
Oh, I was Assistant Secretary of the United States Department of Commerce, the first black. I was also a chairman for economic development for governors. Also, I was only black to be appointed to be over the government's property disposal program, which means my signature alone, I can give away all kind of federal property to anybody. And also, I was educator for over the entire state of Florida education system for about 8 years. And so I've been around the bond for a long time, but I finally dawned on me that somebody got to get out here and start raising Cain on behalf of black folk.
Now, how do we catch up? We're so far behind. How do we catch up to make sure that we can play in the same game or even on the same field?
Well, the first thing I had to do is go back and correct what we've never done. In all my years in national politics and international politics, for most of the people you all are very, very familiar with in name, they never addressed the primary problems of black folk. Our primary problem was not social integration or civil rights. The primary problem is you never corrected the legacies and burdens of slavery. See, the whole point of slavery was to do what? They never asked that. It was to socially engineer black folk into the lowest level of a real-life monopoly game. And what means that they maldistributed almost 100% of all this nation's land, resources, rights, privileges, businesses, and controls of all levels of government into the hands of the dominant white society. Black folk haven't got a snowball's chance of ever being a competitive people. You might struggle and last another 2 or 3 years, but it's going to wipe you out pretty soon. You came out of slavery in 1860 having 1/2 of 1% of this nation's wealth. Here you are 150 years later, guess what? You still own 1/2 of 1% of the wealth. And in a nation, in a race-based society, it is what you own and control that determines your equal opportunities and your rights and privileges. It's had nothing darn thing to do with civil rights. That's a waste of time. It doesn't have anything to do with the voting, but that's an intellectual masturbation process. Ain't gonna do any good. What you need is own and control wealth and power.
They said intellectual masturbation. I heard you say that earlier on something I was watching. You said they get off, but it does nothing for them.
You got it down pat, bro. That's like you starving to death. Somebody give you a steak, you rub it outside your stomach. They ain't gonna do you any good. They doing a damn thing for you.
From the moment we were brought here in bondage in 1619, Black life in this country has been defined by hard work. And our labor has generated success stories that deserve to be celebrated. Commonly, people refer to the 1619 Project as a history, but it's not a history. It really is talking about America today.
The 1619 Project is a 6-part docuseries that explores all aspects of American life through the lens of slavery.
Each episode has its own story arc and has its own particular beat in history.
We were told that by virtue of our bondage, we would never be American. But it was by virtue of our bondage that we became the most American of all. The very first episode is democracy, and it really talks about how Black Americans has been the primary democratizing force over generations in this country.
I want to be able to look back and say, I did this so that you didn't have to. That's what legacy is all about.
The race episode deals with the idea that race is a construct that was made up to divide the powerful from the powerless.
This is a power hierarchy, whether we're talking about where you live, what kind of job you can have, and just in generally how you're valued in society.
The music episode is about how Black music is in every aspect of American life.
There's a whole cultural experience that is fascinating and foreign to white people. They are drawn to this music.
The capitalism episode looks at the particular brutality of the exploitation of labor.
I'm looking at the names of people and their value in the slave ledgers, and they're being listed literally next to a pig or a cow. It's something I'll never forget.
The episode around fear examines the fear of Black men and how that still plays out today.
Jefferson was always worried about a revolution of the wheel of fortune. That is, we're on top now, but this thing can spin.
The justice episode makes the argument that there is a great moral and financial debt that is owed to Black Americans. You are calling for reparations. What is the total that would be owed?
I've seen estimates as high as $14 trillion.
That's a big number.
Yeah.
It's a big debt, though.
It is a big debt.
I think people are going to be compelled and surprised and hurt, but also come away with a newfound respect for the role that Black Americans have played in this country.
We're still here and we're still fighting. As long as there's life, we're gonna have.
Okay. I briefly want to talk about this, the Amanda Seals, right, and the conservative chat with all those. Wait, so it's Amanda Seals, who's a radical, versus we're going to call them 20 conservatives. It's actually just ridiculous. Every time, I feel like I continue to hear people are just calling themselves conservatives, but we haven't gotten to the root of any issue. Like, nobody's actually being clear at all about what makes you a conservative on the right or on the left. Let's be issue specific. And like, seriously, we weren't even really talking about issues. Hold on, I'm gonna like move so we can grab some sun. Yeah, we just weren't being serious about it. Oh, that's hot. We weren't being serious about issues, and that's the part that's like so fucking weird to me. Dude, like, reparations isn't as, how can I say this? I think that reparations in terms of like money is going to have to be paid to Black Americans, right? And it does really feel like, because there's a guy, what is this guy's name? I've like screenshotted a couple of his things. Amazing Lucas. So Amazing Lucas has, for the last like 3 nights or whatever, done some lives where he's like unpacking some of the talking points, and I guess he called out one of the kids in that conversation, and it's just like very clear he has these people who call in and they'll bring up some points. They just have no idea about like anything. Like, some people are talking about FBAs and ADOS, right? These are like the American descendants of chattel slavery, and then the foundational Black Americans, and they're talking about these like 9 pillars or something. And they're like, yes, our group collectively believes in the 9 pillars, whatever that means, because it isn't really clear what it means. But he's trying to like name them. And then this is a guy who calls into Lucas's show, and so Lucas asks him, he's like, well, okay, so how does that apply to anything? Like, what do those things mean for you in application? And he can't name anything. And it's just, this goes on, and he's talking about like the principles and the blah, blah, blah. Reparations actually isn't this like very complicated thing. I think that Black Americans who are entitled to reparations need to stand up and be like, we want reparations. Now, I feel like people think that I am saying this and then they're like, why haven't you done anything? Well, if you our guys are unclear, the black people in California have done quite a lot actually. By doing that, we got a bill that was on the floor. It was like the first part of the bill was to do the research to study like the reparations or something. And there's some senator this year who shut it down, but it was on the ballot last year and the year before that. And pretty much like I think it's been 6 or 7 years in a row that bill has been introduced to try to move it forward. So there definitely has been progress on that, but only in the state of California. There was some other state that kind of mimicked that and is attempting to do something like that, but the black people in California are moving forward. And so I think on the other hand, because this guy who calls in started talking about some framework that the FBA group, which is supposedly like a meetup group on Zoom, has. It's like some pamphlet or some book or something. Now, you don't need any pamphlet or some book. I heard Lucas talk about this, but Claud Anderson, if you don't know who that is, go look that up. He wrote a book called Powernomics, which already lays out a plan and a foundation and a framework and all that shit. We're so far past that. The only thing that there is to do is for living alive like black Americans to show up to political meetings and just walk up to the microphone and say, I want reparations for slavery, and then go sit down, and then everybody who wants it and who's black American there go do that. And then maybe even some Africans who are there be like, yes, we support the black Americans who want slavery. And then all those people just write your names down on a little piece of paper at the community meeting. Well, this is just local politics, right? So everybody who said they want it, you put your name on a piece of paper, and then y'all start having like an email list where you talk to the other people who said they want it. Everybody else, fuck them. They won't get it. They clearly said they don't care or whatever the fuck happened. So they can shut the fuck up and don't go to the meeting, right? So then everybody who said they do care, though, now y'all figure out who you need to talk to. Go talk to whoever was in charge of that meeting and be like, who do we need to meet with to like get this moving forward? That's how you get to the next step and the next step and the next step. And eventually you'll get like something where it's like some piece of legislation in the space where you are to be able to like move that forward. I mean, so many people have done this in the past. I don't actually understand how it's not that difficult, right? But I think it is more like people trying to strategize in online spaces, which it was just very strange to like listen to that man call in and say that, because he was talking about some pamphlet that like and he kept saying, you all know what I'm talking about. He's like, you guys know, we don't know. And it goes on though for like 20 minutes, and it was very strange, very strange. So that's a part of though taking kind of because obviously we're all in like different spaces, we're all in different neighborhoods, we're all in different communities. So like you do have to participate in like your local space or whatever in order to move things forward. So there is no meeting or strategy or pamphlet or no shit like that you need to do. You just show up and then you say, this is what I want. And then somebody there will tell you, okay, so this is the next step, or here's someone else who's working on it. And then in all the cities, when everybody gets their like groups together, then you can have a master email. It's not that hard. I guess there's a whole other thing where I do think there's a lot of people who don't know what local politics are, how to participate, I don't know, go to the city hall building, right? There is a city hall building wherever you are. It's downtown somewhere. And then just say like, hey, when's the local meeting? People are meeting and voting on shit in your city every day. Like there is money being allocated in every single city every day. When you pay taxes, those taxes are going somewhere. Another thing that I think is very interesting to all the people, especially the people from other groups who are so like anti-reparations for Black American people, I think we also need to hold those people accountable to say, you know what, that's totally okay, but we need you to run some checks back. So like, I personally want a check back from the reparations that we provided Japanese citizens for their internment camps. We would also like a refund check, okay, for our tax money that was used to give reparations to Ashkenazi Jews and the descendants of those who were burned in ovens in Germany, because we're not German. I would also like our money back for Israel and all of the fighting going on over there because I'm not Jewish. So what the fuck do I care, right? So since none of that is impacting me, right? Like my tax dollars are going there too. You don't have to care about none of those issues, but your money for sure paid out those people. So to everybody who has that argument, like, well, it wasn't me, I wasn't there, and run that back. Like, just play that on a loop and then say to that person, you know what, you're right. So run me a check back because I don't want to pay for none of the shit that's benefiting you and not benefiting me too. That's a simple response to that argument. And another thing I think is just so strange, like there's it's not even two, it's like a multiple. There's multiple like issues. There's remuneration and then there's like reparation. So remunerations, and actually Amanda Seales did a very good job of explaining this, is about unpaid labor. So you do work and then you don't get paid for it, so you need to get paid for the work. That is one part that's owed. A whole different part is literally reparatory damages. Like when someone does something to you and they cause harm to you, usually the legal statute will say this thing is really bad, so we are going to make you pay a fine. Like if you run a light, like you run a stoplight or something, you got a speeding ticket. The reparations for that are you paying the fine because like you broke the law. So that's what there's, but I mean, then there's whole other parts. I mean, I think Amanda Seales actually did a really decent job of like explaining a few things. There's so many people who've done great jobs at explaining things. I think Seren did an excellent job a while ago explaining, the case for reparations. Ta-Nehisi Coates Ta-Nehisi Coates and his case for reparations, the article was actually the reason that I got into data journalism. And I feel like I've said that multiple times, and I think we've already done a read along on this channel. If we haven't, maybe I'll just do it tomorrow. Someday this week I will get around to doing it. But yes, the 1619 project, the case for reparations, Seren's video, there's like a million videos, right? Like we don't actually need too much more data or research. I think there are just some people who in their minds want to believe we are like this race blind society, and then there's a whole other thing where they just simply don't care about the well-being of Black Americans. That is the core of the issue. And a lot of the disrespect, the really anti-Black policies, anti-Black policies are a real issue that have to be fixed in this country. I don't think that they will, and I think probably enough Black people will leave before there's even a need to ever fix that. Or maybe something will just happen with the union anyway, like secession, or there's probably a couple different options. But yeah, it is weird. I just wanted to talk about that. There's a lot to say. This is probably a much longer conversation, but I'll leave links to all of that in the description box if you're unfamiliar with those people or those